welcome to our channel. I'm Lolina and this is my colleague Kikari, and today we're at the University of Washington campus to interview international students.
And we will talk about the concerns of English as a global language and how it affects international students.
How did you learn your English?
My parents, they are not native speakers of English. They don't usually speak English, so they would also give me books, English books, make me watch English speaking channels on TV, and at school I tried to practice my English, but since we were from a rural area, not many people speak English there. So mostly through books and audio from the channels, TVs that I watch.
I don't know the system over here, but in India you start with kindergarten, and that's why I started learning my alphabets, my vowels. So my first language that I learned in a teaching setting was English. So yeah.
English is a mandatory course in Chinese education in elementary school and middle school, and I didn't take any extra like outside of class English courses, but some other kids do.
English as subject is mandatory from third year student to 12th year student. So I learned English mandatory in my elementary school to high school for 9 years. Yes,
yeah.
9 years.
Part of the reason why I'm learning English is because it's mandatory in Hong Kong. Everyone in Hong Kong in the education system need to take English class. And Hong Kong is a trilingual city. We speak English, we speak Cantonese, and we speak Mandarin. And what's the second part of the question again?
What did you feel about how English was taught? Did they teach well?
A lot of you kind of go student education style in China in general. It's very textbook oriented, and all the content of the teaching class is basically whatever is on the textbook, and then there's less real world application that makes people kind of just know the grammars and don't know how to speak it, or they're not willing to write or do anything else with English unless they're required to.
The English teacher in my primary school, they are also learning English. So it's so sometimes there are words that we don't know, and my primary school is actually in rural area. So there were not many English speakers in my school, so it was hard.
It's been so long. I think so. I'm not sure about it because I was really young. So I think when you are really young, it's easy for you to learn English. And I think I did good. I mean, they did good, yeah.
Education is so hard to define what is good and what is bad because people have different ability. But for myself, maybe because I get used to the education in Hong Kong, because I have exposed to that when I was a little kid, and I think it's good for me.
Were you forced to learn English by your parents, or did you like English in general? Why not?
I wasn't forced per se, but growing up in a developed country, you do need to learn. I mean, if you have the resources, you would want to learn English because all the jobs that are there, in order to grow in your career, you need to learn English. So they didn't necessarily force me, and it's kind of a luxury if your child is taught English. So my parents had the privilege for me to send to a school where I could learn English. So yeah, they didn't force me, but yeah, it's what every middle class to upper middle class family does in India. So
I was forced by my parents because they think that English is a way for me to go for higher education. It's easier for people who speak English to go for higher education in Malaysia.
So actually my parents really wanted me to study English hard. So I used to go to English conversation school, I don't know, it's like private school, and it's a lot of small schools since when I was 3 or something. But when I was 10, I get bored with the English conversation school, and I told my mom that I don't want to go that anymore. So and my mom wanted to like me to be fluent in English. So my mom feel maybe sad, but she was like, okay, if you don't want to do that, you can't stop it. So I created the English conversation school.
I wouldn't say that it's solely because of my parents, like they forced me to learn English. I would say it's the society pushed me to learn English because English, when I was little, I learned that it's an international language. And everywhere you go, at least if you know how to speak English, at least you can do like daily conversation or express what you need.
What do you think of your accent? Does it bother you, or has it ever been a problem to you?
I feel like I'm getting better, maybe, but I still have accent, of course. And like at first, yeah, of course, like sometimes I have a problem with my accent. So sometimes I can't convey my meaning or like I can't say word properly.
I think I take pride from my accent because it's part of my identity, and I've been growing in that region. It just represents who I am.
I do acknowledge that I have accent, but accents to me is like nothing. It won't bother me at all in my perspective because I feel like language is supposed to be a tool or a medium for people to communicate. Like it doesn't matter what my accent is or what my tones are, at least that person I'm trying to communicate get what I'm saying. I think that's effective communication.
When I came in over here, it bothered me a little because a lot of people, I had difficulty I didn't have difficulty communicating with people, but sometimes I had to repeat myself. So that was like, the other person is not understanding, so I had to kind of change the way I accentuate some words. But it was never a big deal. I think being in Seattle, people have been listening to a lot of accents, so they kind of get, they understand what the other person is saying. So it never bothered me.
Do you think English is becoming a threat to your native language?
In cities, yes, but in rural areas, not so much because in rural areas, not a lot of people speak English. A lot of people still use Malay, but in cities, not a lot of people. It's so. I mean, a lot of people still use Malay, but at the same time, like if tourists won't get any problem speaking, learning, or communicating with people in Malaysia, especially in cities.
In some degree, I do feel that it's affecting the way the Hong Kong people use Chinese Cantonese because it's more like your ability, like how your employer is going to determine your abilities based on more your English writing skill, English speaking skill more than how well you can use Chinese or Cantonese.
I don't think so. Like, there's so many expressions in Japanese that English can't express, and like Japanese culture is really strong.
So if I was back home and I had a kid, I would make them learn English more than my native language. In a way, it's a threat because if you want to grow in any career, you do need to learn English. You do need to communicate in English. You cannot do that with my native language. So in that way, it's a threat. But my native language, ODI, is still going strong. People who, the local level people that are there, they speak in ODI, they speak ODI, and I speak ODI really well as well. So it's kind of complementary rather than being a threat. I use ODI in my personal space, in my personal life. I use English in my professional life. So in a way, they complement each other. They're not complementary, but they exist. So it's not. But yeah, I can sense because like right now, I don't get a chance to explore my native language. I don't read a lot of literature in my native language. I don't get to understand. And that way, there's a disconnect between where I come from, because I need to learn where I come from, about my literature, about my history. And in that way, yes, English is a threat, but that's up to me. I need to improve on. I mean, English is there. It's there, but I need to improve upon my understanding of my culture. from a culture that I come in, because it's not our native language, a lot of people make that mistake of speaking really fast. But it's less to do with accents, but more to do the way you communicate. So yeah, accents have never been a problem. I don't
For
think-
me, language is not a skill, but like language a tool for like conveying meanings and like communicate each
I
other.
think accent is a problem as long as the person you're talking to understand what you are saying, and then he or she understand your message.
Point, like, I don't think it's necessarily a problem as long as you can, well, still communicate and get your message across. And just imagine a world without accent. Everybody speaks the same English. It's boring, right?